Let me introduce myself. My name is Dito Renatus with ID number A121221146. In this video presentation, I will be explaining the type of language. For the first one, we have figurative language. Figurative language is language that uses words for expression with a meaning that is different from the literal interpretation. The word figurative means using words in a way that does not mean exactly what they say. It makes the meaning more interesting or creative. It is because figurative language uses creative phrasing to express complex ideas, emotions, or images. An example of figurative language is time flies. It doesn't mean time has wings and can fly. It means time passes very quickly. And on the other hand, literal language refers to words or phrases that can mean exactly what they say, because the word literal in literal language means the exact, straightforward meaning of the word. It says exactly what it means without exaggerations or creative phrasing. Literal language, for example, in literal language, the sentence "It's raining heavily" simply describes weather conditions as it is, without adding any extra meaning or emotion. This type of language is essential in contexts that require precision, such as instruction, scientific descriptions, and formal communication.
Hi everyone, I am going to continue what my friend has explained previously. So my material is going to be about figure of speech. So figure of speech is a type of figurative language often used by writers. Instead of using or sticking to plain old literal language, writers like to use figure of speech because it allows them to be more imaginative, emotional, or even funny in conveying their ideas. You can think of figure of speech as a creative way to express ideas and or make your day-to-day conversation way more interesting. But enough rambling, let's go through the 5 common types of figure of speech, starting with euphemism. Euphemism is when we use a softer or more polite words instead of something that might sound harsh or unpleasant. It is helpful to use when talking about sensitive topics. For example, instead of saying he died, we might say he passed away. Passed away here feels more gentle and makes the conversation way more comfortable, especially in emotional situations. The second is hyperbole. Hyperbole is just a fancy way of saying exaggeration. It is when we overstate something to make a point or to be dramatic or even funny. For example, I told you 1,000,000 times to clean your room. Of course, the person in this example doesn't tell the other person to actually clean their room 1,000,000 times, but they exaggerate their emotion to show how frustrated they feel. And then we move to irony. Irony is when the opposite of what you expect happens. It can be funny, sarcastic, or even dramatic. There are 3 main types of irony. The first of which is verbal irony. It is when we say something opposite of what we mean. For example, when we say, "Oh, perfect," when something goes wrong, and etc. And then we move to situational irony. It is when there's a big gap between what you expect and what actually happens. For example, a fire station burning down. And then the third is dramatic irony. It is when the audience knows something the characters do not. This is common in plays or movies. It creates this sense of suspense or humor. And then we move to the fourth type of figure of speech, which is metaphor. A metaphor is a direct comparison between two things to show how similar they are without using like or as. For example, time is a thief. This suggests time steals moments from your life just like a thief would. And then we arrive at the fifth and final types of figure of speech, which is pun. Puns are wordplay where a word has two meanings or two similar sounding words that are used to create a joke. For example, I am reading a book on anti-gravity. It is impossible to put down. Joke here is the play on the phrase impossible to put down. This phrase can mean both really interesting or literally you cannot put down the book because it defies gravity. All in all, figure of speech are like secret ingredients in language. They make everything more colorful, emotional, and fun. That is all from me. Thank you.
Next, I would like to explain about figures of speech in translation and interpretation. Translating and interpreting figures of speech can be tricky because these expressions often go beyond their literal meanings. They're deeply tied to culture, so translators and interpreters need to understand not just the language but also the cultural context and intended tone. Balancing accuracy while keeping the impact intact requires both language skills and cultural knowledge. Challenges in translating figures of speech. Figures of speech are usually specific to their culture and might not have an exact match in other language. For example, the English phrase kick the bucket, meaning to die, doesn't make sense if translated word for word into another language. To deal with this, translators might need to find a similar phrase or reword it to the same meaning and tone stay the same. Strategies for translating figures of speech. There are a few common ways to handle this. The first one would be literal translation. If the figure of speech works the same in both language, it can be translated as is. For example, time is money. Makes sense in many cultures, in many languages. It makes sense. And the next one is adaptation. When a direct translation isn't possible, the translator might adapt it. For example, the word spill the beans in English, meaning to reveal a secret, could be translated into Indonesian as kebablasan, which also conveys the idea of talking too much. And the last one is explanation or paraphrase. If there is no equivalent exist, the translator might explain or rephrase it. For example, with hyperbole, they might focus on the exaggerated tone rather than finding exact words. Figures of speech in interpretation. Interpreting figures of speech in real time, like during a speech or meeting, is even harder. Interpreters have to quickly understand the expression, figure out its meaning, and deliver it in a way that makes sense to the audience. This is especially challenging with humor, irony, or puns because they're so culturally specific. Interpreters often adjust the wording to keep the original intent and emotional impact intact. That's all for me. Thank you.